The Assembly will hear a statement by His Excellency Hailemariam Desalegn, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. I have great pleasure in welcoming the Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, His Excellency Hailemariam Desalegn. I invite him to address the Assembly.
Madam President, it is indeed a great pleasure seeing the African seasoned diplomat, President of the 69th session of the General Assembly. I would like to express my warmest congratulations to him on his election to this high office. I know he is aware, as we are aware, that he is assuming his responsibility at one of the most critical periods in the history of this organization, and that multilateralism in general. Those of us in the Eastern Africa region know him very well as a friend and distinguished diplomat. We are confident that he will use his wisdom and experience to build consensus on a range of issues on agenda of this historic session of United Nations General Assembly and effectively guide its work. Let me therefore assure him of the full support and cooperation of my delegation in the successful discharge of his heavy responsibilities. I also wish to commend his predecessor for the excellent contribution he made to ensure the success of the 68th session of the General Assembly. Indeed, it was a remarkable session which laid the foundation for the major task that lies ahead. Madam President, this session is being held at a historic period when we have embarked upon a major undertaking to shape the future we want for the present and future generations. If we did what we must, it could be remembered in history as a session that helped us turn the corner in ensuring effective custodianship of the environment, economic justice, and social responsibility. What we agreed more than 2 years ago in Rio must be what galvanizes our common effort. We say then that poverty eradication is the greatest global challenge facing the world today and an indispensable requirement for sustainable development. Last month marked the 500 days until the target date of MDGs, which we have agreed to achieve by the year 2015. In Africa, robust economic growth has been registered over the last decade, and the stereotypical narrative about the continent is slowly changing. Africa is now the rising continent, offering tremendous opportunities for trade and investment. Notable progress has also been made towards achieving the MDGs, including in my own country, Ethiopia. There are nonetheless many remaining challenges, such as with respect to reducing maternal days. It is therefore necessary we move forward in the negotiation to formulate the post-2015 development agenda, not to overlook the fact that the MDGs are still unfinished business. The post-2015 development agenda would be fulsome when it rests on a satisfactory outcome in the implementation of the MDGs, and accordingly, the remaining months should be used to accelerate their implementation. Moreover, the post-2015 development agenda would need to make provision for concluding those aspects of the MDGs that might have to be carried beyond 2015. Madam President, what we have done so far in connection with laying the groundwork for the post-2015 development agenda, both at intergovernmental level and that of the Secretariat, has been encouraging. The Open Working Group on Sustainable Development Goals has successfully completed its work, and the two co-chairs must be commended for the contribution they have made. It would be proper, as the 68th session of the General Assembly has decided to use the Open Working Group's proposal as a basis for integrating sustainable development goals into the post-20 development agenda. I should also express appreciation to the Secretary General for the effort he made in this regard, in conformity with the request contained in the outcome document of the 2010 MDG Summit. The work of the high-level panel of eminent persons on the post-2015 development agenda has been significant. We are particularly appreciative of the invaluable contribution made by the UN System Task Team on the post-2015 UN development agenda. We look forward to the synthesis report by the Secretary General, which we trust would help facilitate effective conversation among member states and productive intergovernmental negotiation with the view to formulating a post-2015 development agenda by next year, an agenda which reflects the interests of the present and the future generations. We have no doubt that a post-2015 development agenda that responds to major challenges the world faces has to rest on a readiness to foster cooperation based on the principle of equitable, common but differentiated responsibilities, and it is difficult to imagine resolving the difficult but indispensable issues surrounding means of implementation, absent flexibility on the question of CBDR. One thing is clear in all this: the world has the capacity and the resource to effectively respond to the pressing needs we see to eradicate poverty and ensure sustainable development for all. This has been affirmed by the report of the Intergovernmental Committee of Experts on Sustainable Development Financing. The committee has not offered us definitive proposals, but rather recommendations designated, as they say, to stimulate discussions. It has nonetheless expressed hope for progress to be made on development financing at the third International Conference on Financing for Development to take place in Addis Ababa in July 2015. Let me affirm our commitment to do our best to ensure this historic and extremely crucial conference succeeds. It appears to us pretty obvious that the effectiveness of the post-2015 agenda depends, among other things, on the success of this Addis Ababa conference. At any rate, it is with that conviction that we will be proceeding to discharge our responsibility as the host country. Madam President, it is also the time that we are striving to achieve an ambitious target that we have set for ourselves to reach a globally binding climate agreement by 2015 so as to limit the rise of global temperature below 2 degrees Celsius. Let me once again express my appreciation to the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon for convening the Climate Summit 2 days ago, and I hope the outcome of the summit will help us to make progress in achieving this fundamental objective by catalyzing action to reduce greenhouse gas emission and strengthening climate resilience. Nonetheless, needless to say that we in Africa are already facing the brunt of climate change, and this is undermining our efforts to meet our development aspirations, including the Millennium Development Goals. For us, adaptation and mitigation remains a priority, and we need urgent international support for our efforts in this regard. Although we have contributed virtually nothing to the global warming, we are indeed playing a leading role in terms of mitigation by scaling up our efforts in renewable energy and promoting energy efficiency. It's only fair and proper that this be adequately recognized and supported. The challenge posed by climate change no doubt requires leadership and political commitment at all levels. We have no choice but to rise up to this challenge by taking concrete actions to contribute to reducing emissions, and demonstrating the necessary political will to achieve a globally binding climate agreement by 2015 in Paris. Failure is not an option. Madam President, what we see here at the United Nations is readiness among the states of our world to think big and to focus on what unites us. This is what underlines the complex negotiations on the post-2015 development agenda. In sharp contrast to this, what we are witnessing today is a general deterioration of the global security situation. The world is passing through a turbulent period, and this is not an exaggeration. The proliferation of and intensity of conflicts has significantly increased. In our part of the world, progress made over the past decade is being undermined by the new cycles of violence and conflicts. The crisis in South Sudan is an example. We in the IGAD region are doing everything we can to resolve the South Sudanese crisis through peaceful means with the support of the United Nations, the African Union, and the international partners. But progress, let alone a breakthrough, has not been easy to come by. This situation highlights an often encountered challenge. Progress in peacemaking can hardly be contemplated when there is lack of sufficient commitment to a peaceful resolution of a crisis by the parties to the conflict. But IGAD is determined to express every possible effort to find a lasting solution to the crisis through an all-inclusive political dialogue. In contrast to the situation in South Sudan, and to much of the situation in many parts of the world, the situation in Somalia has been improving in the course of the year. Al-Shabaab may not have been entirely removed as a threat, but it has been greatly degraded. The recent setback it suffered is bound to speed up its demise. The military gains made on the ground could not be sustained, however, without progress in the political track through the establishment of local administrations and the maintenance of law and order in the newly liberated areas. In this regard, we welcome the establishment of interim local administration in central and southwest Somalia in line with the provisional federal constitution. We need to continue to support Somalia to rebuild itself and make a successful transition by 2016. Conflict, Madam President, is not an exclusively African phenomenon. What is becoming obvious lately is how much the global security situation is becoming a source of concern. Never since the end of the Cold War has the global security situation been as fragile as it is today. The threat of terrorism has affected ever greater and wider areas of the world. At no time over the last many decades has the need for effective cooperation at the international and regional levels been as pressing and as urgent as it is today. That is, the issue of foreign fighters has become a source of major concern to many is very obvious. What is required to make progress in addressing the challenge is a readiness to forge cooperation which brooks no double standards. We need to be resolute in our determination to work together. Madam President, all this means that at no time in recent memory has multilateralism been as immensely critical for the future of the world as it is today. The fact that nations are driven by the pursuit of national interest has always been self-evident. But at this juncture, in the world history and in light of the so many common challenges we are all faced, we have more realistic option than commitment to enlighten national interest, which can be promoted only within the framework of multilateralism. This is, in our view, should be the sentiment we all share at the beginning of the 69th session of the General Assembly. We cannot be oblivious to the nexus between our Sustainable Development Agenda and the global situation of peace and security. Delivering on the implementing A transformative post-2015 development agenda, which is the theme of this session, requires a peaceful and stable global environment. It's also in this context that the threat of the spread of the Ebola virus should be viewed. This is both a humanitarian and security challenge. Containing the spread of this deadly virus should be a matter of utmost priority. Let me reiterate how it is so critical that we collectively address the myriad of peace and security challenges facing our world in order to facilitate progress in the implementation of the Millennium Development Goals in the remaining period and lay a solid foundation for the realization of our transformative agenda in the post-2015 era, as well as achieve a meaningful climate agreement. Madam President, I wish to conclude by stressing Ethiopia's commitment to multilateralism and to joining hands with all like-minded to contribute to regional and international peace and security and to the successful realization of the major project we have in connection with post-2015 agenda. As a founding member of the organization and as a member of the League of Nations, by whom it was nonetheless abandoned, Ethiopia attached the most highest priority to cooperating among peoples and countries with a view to addressing common challenges. It is our conviction that might does not make right. There is no substitute for the pursuit of mutual advantage as a signpost for a realistic and just foreign policy. This is our guide for all friendship and partnership we have and will continue to develop. I thank you for your kind attention.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency.